For my final project, I interviewed Myra, a lawyer from Harrisburg. She was born on January 18, 1950 in Philadelphia. Both her maternal and paternal grandparents are of Russian origin. They migrated from the Baburusk region to the United States as young, single adults. Her mother's mother came to America in 1906.
Grandmother Sarah Jenkins brought when she came from the only remnant of her entire childhood. She came as a 16-year-old woman alone on a ship by herself. I have a feeling she had a very tough time on that ship because she seemed to be a little bit damaged by it. And this is the only toy we had of hers. She never talked about her childhood too much, but this is, and the reason I have it, she had 11 grandchildren, is that I'm named after her mother, and her mother's name was Malka, which means queen in Hebrew.
Despite their Jewish-Russian heritage, her American-born parents chose to cook American food at home.
Totally American food. My father had been a career military officer in the American South. My parents really were not interested, except for holidays. We had very American food. We had pork, not pork, but we had bacon in our home. We were not kosher. We had mixed milk and meat. There was nothing about our life that would distinguish us except for holidays.
So would you eat grains on Passover? Or?
No. But we didn't change dishes the way I do. We changed dishes. We had another set of dishes, but we used milk and meat. You know, I have 2 sets of dishes, and I have 2 more. I only have 1 more because I'm not eating meat anymore, but I have another set of Passover. I have all new pots, all new glasses. Everything's different. But it was enough, you know, it was a gesture towards doing that growing up. And that gesture was kind of good. I liked the idea that I felt that it was a distinction with a difference.
Mm-hmm. She showed me the cookbooks that her mother had used.
This was my mother's very good friend. And she wrote this book in 1957.
Wow.
This is this woman came from an extremely learned background. This explains the dietary laws. It explains the calendar from 1957 for 10 years.
Wow.
It has every holiday. She was a very learned person. Her husband was a doctor. And these are very traditional foods as well as other ones. You know, how to make all kinds of things. But also, you know, like how to make butternut squash, but also very, very holiday-oriented. A chestnut torte, that would not be a typically Jewish thing, but she has all the explanation of kashrut for women who didn't know about it.
Among her treasured items was a silver serving set from her aunt.
I made this into my own, to honor my aunt, who was very generous to me. Every year I have a break the fast on when Yom Kippur is over. You know, it's a 26-hour fast after you've, you know, spiritually cleansed yourself, and then we have people come in. It's the best party to have. It's not really a party because people are exhausted, and they will eat anything. You can give them literally cat food.
She decided to keep kosher after her daughter started at a Jewish school.
You know, I felt like a hypocrite. My child's learning about the laws of kashrut, and one day I ordered some shellfish in a restaurant. She looked at me like I was like, "Mommy, why are you eating that? It's not kosher." So we decided to have a kosher home, and we koshered our kitchen. We got all new dishes, all new pots.
And then it was time to cook. Myra chose a new sweet potato hummus recipe, having been inspired by Middle Eastern cooking in Israel. It was a very simple recipe. It only required mixing a few ingredients in a blender. We started with a few teaspoonfuls of spices, cumin and smoked paprika, which we added to a clove of garlic. Next, we mixed in a few tablespoons of tahini, a sesame seed paste from the Middle East, to give the hummus a nutty flavor. We squeezed in the juice of a couple of lemons to give it a nice paste-like consistency. Myra then added some lemon-infused olive oil, as well as the grated zest of a lemon for extra lemony flavor. These ingredients were added to the blender: chickpeas, the lemon juice, and a chopped baked sweet potato. The lid was put on the food processor and we were ready to blend. Except for one thing, we forgot to plug in the mixer. We blended the food several times, stopping in between each time to push the mixture down to make sure that it was all combined. We season the hummus with pink Himalayan sea salt and black pepper. The juice of a lemon was then added to make sure that it had a nice smooth consistency. After a final blending, it was ready to serve.
Hummus is served in the Middle East. It's never in a tub. It's served flat on a plate, like this. And then
to top it all off, Myra added some sitar spices and a drizzle of olive oil. She served it with pita chips. Delicious! While we ate the hummus, Myra talked about her relationship to food and the importance of having a garden.
Yeah, and I can't express to you how important I now realize that was. In the summer, when we would get ready and pick out the seeds we were going to use, or take a string, I don't know if you ever did this, to make a row. Take 2 pencils and stick it in the ground, and then, and then all summer to see what your own produce. So I don't think I have the classic Jewish background. It's not urban enough. And my parents tried to use this as a vehicle of teaching us about life. One thing I did get is, kind of what they're doing at the Dickinson farm. It's this idea of things are valuable when they're in season. Acceptance of this is the time of the year that when we get blueberries, and we don't have them. We have them around the 4th of July, and that's it. We don't have to have them from Costco 12 months a year and have half of them from Chile. So I understood that, and things are fragile. The earth is fragile.
One final question: what is the relationship between Jewish culture and food?
Jewish food is a compulsion that really dominates. I think most. I was at services on Sunday, and the funny thing was that somebody said, Jewish people are sitting in one restaurant talking about the next restaurant they're going to eat in. Now, I don't know if Gentile people feel this obsessional about food. Do they?
Not to the same extent, maybe.
I wouldn't know.
There's a lot about our recent history that probably created that. I have a very dear friend, a woman that wasn't part of this study, and I could have asked her, who's a survivor of Auschwitz. And I love this woman for a number of reasons. But when I take her someplace, there isn't one time when she doesn't offer me some food that I have to take home. Like, your husband will really like this coffee cake. You must have your husband try this. Would you like to try this? And the reason was, there is a book I gave somebody else. People in death camps made up menus of food. That's what they talked about. And they described about food because they were eating. And I've known, since I've lived in Harrisburg, I didn't know so many growing up, but I've known several people, and sadly many of them have died. But when you've had no food, when I described what my grandparents were in Russia, and they went back to Russia in 1930, and I said I met that cousin of mine, she said my uncle, which was my grandfather, and my aunt, which was my grandmother, came to Russia with big trunks, and in the trunks were salamis, and she told me that they were starving to death. So all of these things together create a different sensibility about food. And that sensibility is that food is something elevate your life. And in our case, maybe overdo it a little bit. We do overdo it. So I guess.
Over my afternoon with Myra, I had apple sauce specially for Hanukkah, mushroom barley soup, sweet potato hummus, as well as some of her vishniak, Russian spiked sour cherries.
Okay, Kate's going to be jealous. Because he's not getting any.
I'm sure he will be.
L'chaim.
L'chaim.
Try it.
She even sent me home with the extra and a small bag of mandel bread and Hershey's Kisses. I truly learned what hospitality meant to Jewish culture and the star role that food plays in this.